Right now, somewhere in this country, a 72-year-old is sitting across from a neurologist, hearing the words mild cognitive impairment for the first time. And the question running through their mind isn't, what do I do next? It's, how long has this been happening? Because the research is telling us something that most people over 70 have never been told. The decline that we assume is inevitable, the fog, the word-finding struggles, the memory gaps, is often being silently accelerated by a deficiency so common, so correctable, and so consistently overlooked that it borders on a public health failure. And there is one vitamin sitting at the center of all of it. I'm Dr. Hayes Anderson, and after 22 years in senior health, I've seen firsthand what happens when this particular deficiency goes undetected, and how dramatically the trajectory can shift when it's finally caught and corrected. Promise, stakes. Today I'm going to tell you exactly which vitamin this is, why the body becomes critically vulnerable to losing it after 70, what it is actually doing inside your brain, and what you can do starting this week to find out if this silent deficiency is working against you right now. By the end of this video, you'll understand your brain's most urgent nutritional need more clearly than most people do after a standard checkup. And I need to tell you something before we get to the main reveal, because there's a reason your doctor may not have caught this even if they looked. That reason changes everything about how you need to approach this. Here is a truth that the supplement industry has largely buried, and the healthcare system hasn't done enough to surface. After the age of 70, the human body undergoes a physiological shift that has nothing to do with how well you eat. It has nothing to do with how healthy your lifestyle is, how active you are, or how good your diet has been for the past 40 years. Your stomach lining thins. The cells responsible for producing a critical protein called intrinsic factor begin to decline in number and output. And without intrinsic factor, the vitamin we're talking about today cannot be absorbed from food, no matter how much of it you consume. This is not a willpower problem. It is not a dietary failure. It is biology. And it is happening in an estimated 1 in 3 adults over the age of 70, quietly and without symptoms obvious enough to trigger alarm, until the effects have already taken hold. The vitamin is B12. And what it does inside the aging brain is not optional. Vitamin B12 is the structural architect of your nervous system. Its primary function in the brain is maintaining myelin, the protective sheath that wraps around every nerve fiber in your body, the way insulation wraps around an electrical wire. When myelin is intact, nerve signals travel fast, clean, and accurately. When myelin begins to degrade, which is exactly what happens when B12 is chronically low, signals slow, they misfire. They fade before they reach their destination. The result, in a brain already navigating the natural changes of aging, is a measurable and progressive worsening of cognitive function that looks indistinguishable from the early stages of dementia. This is the detail that makes B12 deficiency uniquely dangerous in seniors. It mimics dementia, not vaguely, precisely. The same foggy thinking, the same word retrieval delays, the same short-term memory gaps, the same difficulty concentrating, which means that a significant number of older adults who have been told, or who fear, that they are experiencing the early stages of Alzheimer's may actually be experiencing a B12 deficiency that is fully reversible. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Edwin. He was 74, a retired high school history teacher from the Midwest, the kind of man who could recite dates and names from 3 centuries without hesitation. His wife brought him to see me because she had noticed something changing over the previous 2 years. He was losing words mid-sentence. He would go to another room and forget why he was there within seconds of arriving. He had become quieter at family gatherings, not depressed, she said, just slower. like something had turned down the volume on him. Edwin had seen 2 other physicians. Both had reassured him that this was consistent with normal aging. Neither had run a complete B12 panel. When we tested Edwin's levels, his active B12, the form the body can actually use, was severely depleted. He had been eating well his whole life. The problem wasn't his diet. It was his stomach's diminishing ability to absorb what he was eating. We changed his supplementation approach, and within 4 months, his wife called my office to tell me he had started a new reading group at the public library. He wasn't cured, but the decline had reversed direction. Stories like Edwin's are not rare in my practice. They are common, and they represent one of the most unnecessary tragedies in senior health: cognitive decline that is not Alzheimer's, not inevitable, and not irreversible, moving forward unchallenged because the right test was never ordered. Here is the mechanism in plain terms. B12 also plays a direct role in regulating homocysteine, an amino acid that, when elevated, becomes actively toxic to brain tissue. In a well-functioning system, B12 converts homocysteine into methionine, a harmless and useful compound. But when B12 is low, homocysteine accumulates, and elevated homocysteine has been identified in multiple major studies as one of the most consistent independent risk factors for accelerated brain atrophy, vascular dementia, and Alzheimer's disease in older adults. A landmark study published in the journal Neurology found that seniors with high homocysteine levels had significantly faster rates of brain shrinkage than those with normal levels, and that B12, along with folate and B6, was the primary modifier of that risk. Stay with me, because what comes next is where most seniors go wrong, even the ones who already know they need B12. The standard blood test most doctors order measures total B12 in the bloodstream, and it can produce a result that looks perfectly normal, while the brain is quietly starving. Total B12 counts everything circulating in the blood, including forms of the vitamin that are bound to proteins and unavailable for use. The number that actually matters is active B12, sometimes called holotranscobalamin. A senior can have a completely normal total B12 reading and still have critically low active B12 levels. This is why the standard test misses so many cases. If your doctor has told you your B12 is fine based on a routine blood panel, and you are experiencing any cognitive symptoms, ask specifically for an active B12 or holotranscobalamin test. You are not being difficult, you are being precise, and precision is what this situation requires. The form of supplementation matters just as much as the dosing, because the same absorption problem that prevents dietary B12 from reaching the brain also affects most standard oral supplements. Cyanocobalamin, the cheapest, most common form in pharmacy supplements, goes through the same absorption pathway that is failing in most adults over 70. The result is a supplement that looks right on the label and produces minimal results in the body. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Vera. She was 71, a former nurse, someone who understood more about medications than most of my patients, and she had been taking a standard B12 supplement for 3 years because her sister had been diagnosed with a deficiency. Her levels came back in the low normal range on total B12. She had been having increasing trouble concentrating at her book club, losing track of conversations, feeling mentally slower than she had 10 years before. When we switched her from oral cyanocobalamin to a methylcobalamin sublingual, which absorbs directly through the tissues under the tongue, bypassing the gut entirely, her follow-up active B12 levels were meaningfully higher within 8 weeks. The mental clarity she described at her next visit was not dramatic, but it was consistent and it was real. Methylcobalamin is the active, bioavailable form of B12. Sublingual delivery, tablets that dissolve under the tongue, bypasses the absorption problem in the stomach and delivers the vitamin directly into the bloodstream. For seniors over 70 with declining intrinsic factor, this distinction between supplement forms is not academic. It is the difference between a supplement that works and one that doesn't. The other form worth knowing is hydroxycobalamin, which has a longer half-life in the body than cyanocobalamin and is used in some B12 injections. For seniors with severe or confirmed deficiency, intramuscular B12 injections remain one of the most reliable delivery methods available, bypassing absorption issues entirely. This is something to discuss directly with your physician if standard supplementation hasn't moved your levels. None of this should replace a conversation with your doctor. If you are taking medications, particularly metformin for blood sugar, proton pump inhibitors for acid reflux, or certain cholesterol medications, ask specifically about B12 depletion, because all three of these drug classes are known to reduce B12 absorption over time. This is not a side effect most prescribers mention proactively, but it is real, it is documented, and it is worth raising. Your brain is not simply getting older. In many cases, it is being deprived of something it urgently needs and has a documented ability to respond to when that need is met. I have seen this in my practice more times than I can count. The senior who was quietly accepting a gradual dimming, who was told this was just aging, who finally got the right test and the right treatment and found that the light hadn't gone out. It had just been cut off from its source. So here is what to do. First, ask your doctor to test your active B12, holotranscobalamin, not just total B12. If they aren't familiar with the test, you can request it at a laboratory directly in most regions. Second, if you are currently taking a standard oral cyanocobalamin supplement, consider switching to a methylcobalamin sublingual. 1,000 micrograms daily is a commonly discussed starting point, but confirm the right dose for your situation with your physician. Third, if you are on metformin, a proton pump inhibitor, or a cholesterol medication, have an explicit conversation with your prescribing doctor about whether B12 monitoring should be part of your regular care. Fourth, add B12-rich foods to your diet, not as a replacement for supplementation at this stage, but as support. Eggs, sardines, clams, fortified nutritional yeast. Fifth, consider asking about homocysteine testing alongside B12. If your homocysteine is elevated, it tells you the deficiency is already affecting brain chemistry and that correction is urgent, not optional. You deserve to know whether that is happening to you, and you deserve to find out while there is still time to change the trajectory. Which of these details surprised you most? The testing gap, the absorption issue, or how closely B12 deficiency can mimic Alzheimer's? Tell me in the comments. I read every one of them. And if someone you care about is over 70 and hasn't had their active B12 checked, share this video with them, not as an alarm, as a starting point. In the next video in this series, we're going deeper into something that connects directly to B12, to brain health, and to nearly every chronic condition affecting seniors today, chronic inflammation. Because new research is revealing that the low-grade inflammatory state that most seniors are living in without knowing it may be the master switch behind cognitive decline, heart disease, and accelerated aging. That video is coming, and it may be the most important one in this entire series.